The topic of today is quite interesting. The déjà vu, according to one of the standard dictionaries of English language, the Merriam-Webster, is the illusion of remembering scenes and events when experienced for the first time. And it's a feeling that one has seen or heard something before. You might not know that there's actually a lot of people who have had déjà vus before. 60 to 90% of people report having once had a déjà vu. But most déjà vus occur in teens or young adults. There are déjà vus which are general, like people like you and me, but there are also déjà vus for people with some brain illness, some condition that causes them to have déjà vus. But we'll be mostly talking about the more general déjà vu today. There's some scientific explanations. There is the theory of divided attention, which means that sometimes we are focused on some things, but then we are not aware of something else, and then something else, some other information, we've just become aware of it later. So it feels like we've had a déjà vu, but it's actually an illusion. A similar theory, but focused more on the brain, is that déjà vu is a failure of the brain, that we have a temporal lobe of the brain communication issue, so that some part of the brain is just communicating in the wrong way, and that somehow the short and long-term memory are out of sync. They are not communicating well. So we think that we've seen something before, but actually it just hadn't registered yet. That basically is what it comes down to in most of those theories. Because they kind of extrapolate that if ill people, if the people with a brain illness, if they have déjà vu, then it must be the same reason for other people as well. But then not everything seems to be explained, can be explained by this. You know, sometimes you might have this experience that you are very familiar with something. You know, some people come to our temple and they see an image of Luang Pu, the great meditation master who was able to come up with the meditation method that we used tonight. So some people feel very familiar with him, and then they can't explain that. On a similar note, in the time of the Buddha, there was one event which is quite interesting. When the Buddha visited one city or village, two people, they came running to the Buddha and they suddenly started to embrace his feet. They started bowing for him, and they said, "Oh, our son has returned, our son has returned." Now, the Venerable Ananda, who was the attendant of the Buddha, thought we're maybe delusional or something. But it turns out that these two people, the parents of Nakula, they've said that even though in this life they were the parents of Nakula, they had actually been the Buddha's parents in many lifetimes. This is what the Buddha said himself. And that the reason why they felt so familiar to him is because of a déjà vu. Well, the Buddha didn't use that word because the word did not exist at that time, but it was obviously that there was some sort of feeling that motivated them to really come to see the Buddha. They immediately recognized him as their son. They had him as a son before. And they had also been other kinds of family relations. They had been uncles and aunts and grandparents. So this was quite interesting. And there's these often these stories that our abbot in Thailand he tells, you know, he will be talking about people who have been all kinds of relations together. Sometimes, you know, in this life, some people are married, but in the previous life, they might have been sisters and brothers, brother and sister, or it might be the other way around. In this life, they are brother and sister, but in a previous life, they were married. But that is how the cycle of existence works in Buddhism. And you might not believe it fully. You might not believe it. You might have some doubts. Well, that's fine. But this is a very important teaching in Buddhism, that we have not been here for the first time, that we have been born and reborn in the cycle of existence. And the Buddha said it's very hard, very difficult to find any person somewhere that has not been a family member of you before, that has not been your parent, that has not been your father, your mother. Just pick one of those. It's already very difficult to find anyone who's not been your mother before in this planet. Now let that sink in for a minute. I mean, people often say, and even Western Buddhists, that why should you talk about reincarnation? It's such a far-fetched idea and so on. But when you really think about it, you give it a chance to develop in your awareness that may be a possibility. It changes your perspective. I mean, if everybody in the world was once family in some way, reincarnation also says that we have all been family before. You do not need to do a DNA test for that. It's simply a belief in Buddhism that we are all connected, and that it's very hard to find somebody who has not been your family before, even though we might look very different from the outside. So this is just an example of people in the time of the Buddha who had a déjà vu. And but there's an interesting perspective in Buddhism. So I just mentioned the part of previous existence. But a human being, according to Buddhism, that is also an important point, is more than just his brain. You're more than just your brain. Your memory does not only contain images of this life, but also previous lives. So in a recent study that came out, they said that the reason why we forget our memories from our childhood and from our young years as a child. Sometimes your parents, they tell you things about what you did or what you said when you were a kid, and then you can't remember it. Have you ever had that experience? Maybe you did. But that according to a recent study that came out in the newspapers, they wrote about it in newspapers. It turns out that those kind of memories, according to a new theory in science, in neurology, they say that those memories are actually still there. We just can't access them. It's not that our memories are gone, as we normally say in common parlor, but it's that they are hidden from sight. Now, that is exactly what Buddhism says. Buddhism says that our mind consists of several processes, as you can see here depicted. And these processes, they are different layers of the mind. And these layers, we are not able to access them because our mind has many hindrances. There's restlessness, there is all sorts of stuff going on in our mind. And because our mind is not still enough, we cannot fully use the capacities of our mind. We can sometimes gain access to these memories. Sometimes there may be little flashes of insight, things that we experience, ideas and other things that come up. And that is because the mind is in contact with a deeper layer inside. But that is not very reliable. And sometimes these flashes of insight, they can be incorrect as well because they are distorted when they come up to the surface. They become distorted sometimes. So we still have to check for accuracy, right? But in meditation, we are actually able, if you meditate every day, you develop your meditation, it's possible that one day you are able to see back in your life. And you don't even have to have like a very high advanced experience like the Buddha did, right? Even just now meditating and your mind is very still, you may sometimes remember things that you didn't remember before. It's weird, And you don't have to be an excellent meditator. to have this. Just meditate every day, and these experiences will come if your mind is still. So this is just things that everybody can experience. Meditation is so powerful. It's like you're plowing the land. You're plowing the land, and sometimes some old things can come up that are lying beneath the soil. But that is not what the Buddha experienced, okay? The Buddha, he used the eye of the Dhammakaya, very strong inner experience, inner clarity, and he saw not only his own life in this present life, but he saw the previous lives as well that he had, many lifetimes. So he was able to see how life in the cycle of existence works. Now as I said, it's free. You might believe that or not. But there are some people who believe that they can scientifically study these things. This is a person, this man at the right, he's called Ian Stevenson. Ian Stevenson he's passed away now, but he started a research project at the University of Virginia. More than 3,000 cases of children who remembered their previous lives. You can see him here in the picture walking with the Dalai Lama. He's at the left here. He's cut out of the picture. I'm sorry for that. But actually, he was not practicing Buddhist, but he did believe that Buddhism could provide valuable insights. And of course, doing scientific research about children who can remember their previous lives is very controversial. And it was never really accepted by mainstream science. It still is not. It's now being continued by an American called Jim Tucker. And he has actually also written many studies about children who can remember their previous lives. And some of those are very convincing. One study is this kid, James Leininger. He was a kid who could remember a previous life. And his father, his parents were, well, they lived in Texas. So they were very skeptical. These were very Christian people. But his father got more and more convinced because of the things that his kid said about his previous life. And then eventually his father started to do research on Google. And now in those days, internet wasn't as developed as it is now, but still he managed to find a lot of information, which apparently it matched with his kid. And everything his kid was talking, his kid James, it just matched with what he was searching for. It just didn't make any sense to believe anything else. And eventually his parents really believed very strongly that his kid had a previous life as a soldier during the Second World War, when they were attacked, when they were fighting the Japanese during the Second World War, and he died. And he was reborn as his son, James Leininger. And eventually, the story actually had a very nice ending. James Leininger actually wrote a letter to the mother of the old soldier who was his previous life. And that mother was still alive. And the mother immediately was convinced that this child was her son, reborn as James Leininger. So it's a very interesting story, and they have not so long ago been interviewed again. So these kind of stories make you have some doubts, let me just say that it kind of causes you to be a bit more open to other possibilities, and that we may not have been here for the first time. And it's fitting, the Buddha said, to be in doubt sometimes about things that you should be in doubt about, especially things that are worth considering, worth thinking about, things that may not be easy to observe. In Buddhism, it's said that you can develop faith, though, faith as in conviction of, and a faith that everything we do has an effect. This is what we call faith in Buddhism. You may believe that the Buddha really became enlightened. That may be part of it as well, like a faith in the Buddha. But the basic foundation of faith in Buddhism is about that our actions really matter. Buddha said that by analyzing, by listening to true Dhamma, to listening to wise teachings, which we get from a good source, associating with good people, which could also be books, wise books, and then reflecting on that, we then practice it, and then we can understand, we can see these things for ourselves. Now, we might not be able to look into the past in previous lives as Ian Stevenson did, or as the Buddha did in his meditation experiences. But we might still use our reasoning, and we might still use our observation powers. Just looking at our actions, how they affect our lives, and seeing how our actions affect our life, we can also extrapolate. We can also think then, well, then it means that in this life, we might also have been influenced by our previous lives. Everything's connected. And there's this wonderful quote in a book. And this book is called Cloud Atlas. There's this wonderful quote that says, "We are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future." And gradually, we can develop more and more wisdom about this. We can understand this deeper and deeper through our learning, through our reflection, but also through the still mind. And this is when we gain the clearest insight. So this is what we call the 3 kinds of wisdom in Buddhism. To end with, I'd like to say this is a teaching from our deputy abbot in Thailand, Longpo Dattativo. He always says these 4 things are important to think about. He says this life has its origins. This is not the first life that we have been born in this present world. We have been in this cycle of existence for many lifetimes. And our lives are therefore, our life right now is influenced by previous lives. But this life that we are in right now, it's because of that, it's also uncertain. It can go up and go down because of the previous karma from the past. Because of that, because we know there's previous lives, there might also be next lives. So we know this life has its value. We can do a lot of good, and everything we do, we birth our future, like David Mitchell said. But our lives are limited in time. Because of that, we can use every moment we have in this life to do good, to say good things, and to train our mind. So that is all I would like to say, talk about today.